So the mall itself would be demolished and new buildings would be put up in its place. So I'm going to say the anchor to that would be the civic activities. So what that includes is the traffic precinct that was previously slated to be built on the old Cecil site across the street, as well as a police precinct and the relocation of the Raleigh Library. So a lot of these things were actually going to happen in the next few years already, but it's kind of bringing all of those activities into one central site and creating a community hub, which again gets back to that town center aspect. So the idea is also that once the city does development on those civic activities, that would leverage private development to the south of the site, and that's shown in red there. And that could look in many different ways, and that's more of a market-driven thing than something that we can design on paper. You know what I mean? It's what businesses come to the table, and those businesses who are ready to invest in the area. So that could, the form of those buildings could definitely change, but that's kind of the concept, is to get those civic activities there and built, which will leverage the private development. So there in the green that just popped up there, it's closer to the residential areas, and the idea is to really activate the site more than just maybe a mall would, so more activity during the day, during the evening, things of that nature. So bringing a variety of activities such as a farmer's market is one of the things that we see could be a positive to the site. And another one of the things, again, giving variety to the site, is a skate park. So this is something that the Parks Department has noted as a real need for the city. There was a previous skate park that is extremely active over at Toby Park across the street from the fairground site, and it's kind of overloaded with all of the folks who are into the sport and stuff like that. So it creates amenity for after school. It creates, people would come in from all over the city, because this would be one of a really best-in-class skate park. And then the recreational lake would be close up to Austin Peay. So this creates a visual interest at the beginning of the front of the site, and it really just activates it in a different way. And what this gives us the opportunity to is have more of the parking areas in the rear of the site. So again, it's urban strategy with making it maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and getting the parking kind of to the rear of the site. And then wrapping up the site in itself is our proposed walking trails. One of the things that we heard from the community meetings is really that the mall, one of the biggest uses in and of itself is physical activity for people of all ages. So this is something that we wanted to really focus in on and make sure that it's a kind of a community amenity, just like farmers market, skate park, all of those different things would be, to make this part or the town center of Raleigh really vibrant for its neighbors. And like we spoke about before, the civic activities to the north of the site, that would include a traffic precinct and a police precinct. And one of the other reasons that this is kind of brought into one site is because when you share a facility, you can share things like break rooms, restrooms, those types of things. So it actually makes for a much better and more efficient way of building, because you can work together to have those shared common amenities. And then, like I mentioned before, the Raleigh Library is already in plan for it to be rebuilt in the next few years. And again, bringing all those different amenities onto the site here at the mall, it creates just that community center. So we see the library being a place where kids can go after school, where people can have community meetings. So it's a little bit bigger than just a library in and of its word. It's something that has a bunch of meeting spaces and provides computers and all of that. So a little bit of the background, like Mari was talking about with the urban renewal plan. The funding for a portion of this project is already in place. So Maureen, I'll let you explain that a little bit.
So, as many of you know, we did have money in the capital improvements budget for that traffic precinct that was slated to be constructed on the site across from the mall. And we, late last year, were able to get approval by City Council to transfer it over to the site. So, this is just the amounts of what we have in place right now for the project, and we're have a request in for some next fiscal year capital improvement dollars as well for the construction. And again, as I mentioned, the purpose of the meeting tonight wasn't to present anything that hasn't been presented before, but that this is part of the process of adopting an urban renewal plan for the site so that we can have a plan in place to assist with the acquisition for the site. We've taken into consideration that there's multiple owners of the property, so that we need to have a plan in place to help facilitate that acquisition. And it also provides documentation that the property is currently blighted and that it's having a negative impact on the properties around it as a blighting influence as well. So that's basically what the urban renewal plan will do. So as I mentioned, tonight is really our last step in the process of the plan being adopted, is this public hearing. And from tonight on, we will have a record that we've had this meeting and have everyone's comments. And I think now, just to wrap up with the benefits of the project, again, as Kate mentioned, the civic complex has a much bigger impact on the community than just the development of a traffic precinct across the street. The mall redevelopment has been identified as the critical, important piece of the redevelopment of the Austin Peay corridor. We, many of you participated in a planning process that we started 3 or 4 years ago, and we kept hearing something's got to be done with the mall. The Raleigh area really warrants a revitalization intervention so that we keep the stable property values in the neighborhood stable, and that it doesn't have any further deterioration with the effects that the mall has had. The project creates opportunities for more efficient delivery of public services. As Kate mentioned, having everything on one site does make for more efficient operations. And last, it creates opportunities for multiple city divisions to relocate to better locations. Many of the ones that exist now are really isolated, or in the case of the library, it's very small, it's overutilized because of its size, and a newer library can have modern technology and better things that libraries offer these days, such as the facility that we're in. It's night and day from the older library. And this, our last slide just shows again the maps of where the town centers are, with Raleigh being at the north. And I did want to recognize our director, Robert Lipscomb, to help wrap us up.
Here, let me do this.
When you remember when the mall was built, it's something. Because I worked at DuPont as well. Remember what DuPont? And I worked at DuPont when that mall was built. That was in 1973. I started with DuPont. So it was a great mall at that time, but it was a different demographic. And what we got to do is stop the bleeding now, because Wolf Chase is going out. I hope you know that it's going to go even further east now, because there's some talk of them building a mall further out east, and you know what's going to happen. So it's going to take these shopping centers, the stores further out east. And so we got to stop the bleeding right now. We think we're going to make Raleigh something special, because Raleigh deserves better than this game. I think we all know that.
Amen.
And so all we want to do is stop the bleeding, stop this blight that's going east, and stop it right where it is, and stabilize it. Because Raleigh Mall was a great mall until they built this expressway that kind of made everything go bypass it. And that was, I don't get into all that. You know what I'm saying? When they built an expressway, it kind of diverted traffic from the mall. I don't understand that because I'm not an engineer. But it didn't make any sense then, it doesn't make any sense now. So we're trying to restore Raleigh to where it's rightful place and protect these investments, because we can't have people keep moving out east. It just doesn't help us to the city. And I think Raleigh has a kind of demographic, it has some really great people. And people are really, the Raleigh Community Council, you've really been in there. You've hung in there with us, and for the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen the same people over and over again. So that's why I've been fighting so hard. I mean, we have been fighting so hard for this thing. Y'all have no idea how hard this has been, okay? And it's been an uphill battle. It's almost as, I'm gonna say as much as a pyramid, but trust me, it has been very, very complicated because people don't understand why this is important. It is really important we protect our neighborhoods. And I can see Raleigh coming back, and once we do this, it makes the area safer. You're going to increase foot traffic. I think we've been talking about, you know, those bottoms down there where all those kids go and they do all kind of crazy stuff down there. There's a place in Nashville that makes that a tourist attraction. And so we're even going to Nashville and see how can we get some economic development. They're already down there, aren't they?
Yep.
They're already down there. So let's do what? Let's get some economic development from there, all right? So we're looking at Nashville to make that kind of like a zip line, kind of build some infrastructure out there because they're there and they're not going anywhere. Let's get more of them. Because I think they kind of off a little bit, but they don't bother anybody. It's good, clean fun with those 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers. So let's take advantage of it. And the only other thing I'll say is that we talked to a good company, and I'm not getting into the name right now because of that changes. And you know, retail always changes. But I can tell you this, I should tell you. We're talking to Walmart every day about putting a major center right there at the mall. See, once you do that, that's going to create all kind of good interest of other retailers. And so we're talking to them, almost begging Walmart to please come either with a neighborhood market or a major store. Now, if they put a major store there, their store up in the other part will have to be dealt with too. But the good thing is Kroger is expanding. So our thinking is that we can get Walmart to move that store down there and get Kroger to expand, then Walmart will sell their store up there and move down there. That's our thinking. But I think in the worst case scenario, we'll get a neighborhood market from Walmart. I'm very confident about that. And we've talked to other people about putting in retail, so we'll get Walmart. I think it's going to make other retail come there as well. And my biggest concern now is Kmart. I mean, that's the only Kmart in Memphis. And, you know, big boxes, they operate on efficiency. So it can't be an efficient business model with only one Kmart in the city. So I'm really concerned about Kmart remaining. And I think it's a concern of all of us that if we don't do something, Kmart's going to leave too, because it's just not a good, efficient business model to have one store in Memphis right there. So we're going to try to do all we can to keep that store there too. And I think we have a lot of potential growth, lots of potential with Raleigh Mall. I think we've got to tell people that Raleigh's important. And that's where we're going to put a stake in the ground right there and say, we're not going any further east. We're going to rebuild our city right here. Now, is it going to be easy? No. It's not going to be easy. And I want you to think that those retailers out at Wolf Chase Mall are going to come running back to Raleigh Mall. They're not. But I think there's enough demand to get some retailers to come and be there. At least that's what I'm hoping. Okay? And that's our thinking. And it's not going to be easy because you got some existing property owners that are going to be real tough to deal with. And we've got to find a balance between taking their property and giving them a fair price. Because if you're a property owner, you're going to want to know what? Let me hold out for the highest price. But we can't do that because if you pay too much for the property, what happens? The project becomes infeasible, or not feasible. So you got to find a balance between property rights and what? And the right to move ahead with this project. And that's always a conundrum and tough. So how do you protect the rights of home ownership? That's basic. That's basic. Home ownership rights are basic in this country. You don't want anybody taking your property. However, if we're going to progress, we can't give people an exorbitant price for their property. We got to give them a fair price and then move on. Does that make sense to everybody? So you don't hear people saying, I want this, I want this. And we've done it, we've dealt with that in other places because people will want more than what the property's worth. And if we start giving properties more than the property's worth, it makes the project what? Not feasible. Does everybody understand that? So we take property only as a what? Last resort. We give them a fair price, and what was three appraisals? Two.
Well,
Two appraisals, and then we average the appraisal, and then we say, okay, here's what you get for the property. So we don't take the property without giving them a fair price. And if it gets to the point where they want a lot more, then we have to take the property and move on. That's the way it is. Yes, ma'am.
Has the city actually acquired any of that property yet?
No, we haven't acquired anything. No, ma'am.
that's why we're having this hearing. We can't move forward with any of those things until we have the hearing. The hearing is the formal way, as Mari said, of letting everyone know that we intend to be in this area exercising all of those rights that are given to us under state law. But before we begin that process, there has to be a hearing for everyone to understand it, to state their opinions about it, and to get feedback and everything else so that we can proceed.
Due
This is a
process.
necessary process.
Due process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What's gonna happen to the old Cecil's property that's cleared and that was gonna be the police precinct?
We're trying to sell that property. Because at the time, that was gonna be the original home of the traffic, we we're gonna try to sell that.